Hey, brand builders, ready to take your brand to the next level? I'm Dana Ammons, and welcome to the Brand Blueprint. Welcome back to the Brand Blueprint podcast. I'm your host, Dana Ammons, and today we're diving deep into the world of promotions, loyalty programs, and how brands can turn customer insights into impactful strategies. Now, today I'm thrilled to be welcomed with a really great guest. His name is Christopher Cubba, and he is a seasoned expert in loyalty programs, promotional strategies, and scaling businesses for major CPG and retail brands. So, similar to my background, he's worked in the CPG industry for years, has a lot of great stories, some of which we actually we're talking about off camera. And we'll hopefully bring some of that conversation back to you on camera. But let me talk a little bit more about Christopher's experience. He has over 20 years of experience in strategic marketing and has helped some of the biggest brands in the industry enhance customer engagement, retention, and long-term loyalty. Really, great career. And we'll explore how qualitative insights shape successful promotions, how brands can balance emotional connections with data-driven loyalty programs, and key strategies for small businesses looking to compete in this space. And I got to tell you guys, this is important because as you've heard me talk about in previous episodes, it is really important to finish the job of marketing your brand by also supporting it with relevant promotions. And that definitely includes some of the different tactics and programs that Chris has a lot of expertise in and will share with us today. So if you're wondering about different ways and tactics that you can drive some additional growth, and movement in your brand, you'll want to definitely pay attention to this episode today. So, before we get in, I want to actually take a little bit of time, as always, to get to know Chris a little bit better. So, Chris, are you ready for our rapid fire question and answer segment?
I am ready. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. All right, so let's get to know you a little bit better, Chris. And I think we had kind of already touched on this, but just starting off with one of the show's favorite questions: coffee or tea?
Coffee all day, every day.
Now, follow-up question. Any sort of preferred brand and or mix? And I'll give you some context. I had a guest on from Boston last week who was a coffee fan, and I had to ask
Yep.
because they are such a Dunkin' Donuts dependent market if Dunkin' Donuts was in their rotation or not. And surprisingly, it was not. So I have to ask, being in Connecticut in the Northeast, where I actually my first coffee addiction was actually born out of moving to New York City
Yeah.
in the late 90s, early 2000s, working for Colgate Palmolive and realizing that in order to be cool and to kind of hang with the cool kids in marketing, I needed to have one of those Starbucks cups with the sleeve on it. Like it just had to happen. And so even though I wasn't a coffee drinker, my go-to Starbucks drink was actually caramel apple spice, which is essentially apple cider hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but nobody knew because it was in the cup. So tell me a little bit more about like what kind of car are you really into it? Do you grind your own beans at home? Do you get into it?
Yeah. I don't want to risk coming off as the
Coffee
pretentious,
snob.
coffee snob, but we grind some beans in the house.
Nice.
But I'm really a tale of two cities. I think I was telling you this before, like father of four, young kid, 7 to 14, lots of events going on. Like some
Yeah.
days the coffee is literally just fuel to make it to the end of the day before we all collapse. When I'm feeling extra special though, back similar to you in New York City, man, Cafe Grumpy was the place where I learned what real sort of like
Coffee.
pour
Mhm.
over coffee
Mhm.
should be. And then now at home, on a weekend when we have a little extra time, we've got the Chemex pour over coffee we do, and
I love that.
but mostly just black and hot, and
Yep.
life is good.
Love it. Love it. Now, follow up as a dad. I hear you heard you mention 4 kids. So I've always got a question for parents that are juggling that kind of
Yeah.
that kind of mix in terms of kids. What would you say is your favorite go-to meal for you and the kids? Right. So when you gotta like midday, midweek, you gotta come up with something for a meal, 4 kids in the house. What
Yeah.
would you say is your number one go-to?
Oh God, that's such a hard question. All right, I'm going to give you a little insight into the way in which our house works.
Yep.
First of all, my wife is a saint, and she gets us through the week. The Monday to Friday, the meals, the chicken nuggets, the spaghetti, the
She's captain of the
the
ship. Yep.
yeah, she is. And I grew up I love food, and again, this is not helping my pretentious vibe at all. But prior to my dad, we always joke, getting a real job and becoming an accountant because he started having kids. He was a chef at a French restaurant, so
Oh,
we grew
wow.
up, and I'm Italian heritage, so we grew up eating really
Really
well, and
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
and if I wasn't doing this uh, in the marketing space, well, let me back up. My C minus grade point average throughout high school and college wasn't like setting me out to be the next neurosurgeon. So I sort of had two of those pivotal moments where you're like, well, sales and marketing is interesting, and you don't need to be super brilliant. No disrespect to people
Yep.
like me.
And you,
And then I was like,
both
and
of
I
us.
love, I love cooking, and I love like what my dad, the stories of what he was doing in the restaurant industry, and so I love to like I can make a pretty mean steak, and my
I
9-year-old
love
will
that.
just eat it all day long.
I
Um,
love that.
we do like birthday souffles. So that's the kind of stuff I come in on. I got a Traeger grill recently, so we've been doing a lot of
Oh, I
barbecue
love
in the
it. I mean, the
backyard.
fact that you're doing birthday soufflés, forget that. The fact that you're doing soufflés, period, because I'd
Yeah.
like to say I share your passion in culinary arts. I
Yeah.
don't have your excuse for not going into the industry though, because at least you knew what it looked like. I tell people all the time, I probably would have ended up in some sort of culinary path
Yeah.
had I been born maybe 10 years later, and all of the YouTube access plus the shows like Hell's Kitchen and
Yeah.
and all the celebrity chefs and Food Network, I would have immediately chose. But I remember in the early 90s telling my mom, "Hey, I think I kind of want to maybe go into like the culinary world." And I
Yeah.
never forget my mom saying, saying, "Dana, it- do you want to actually be able to make money and pay for yourself when you get out of this house? Because you're not staying here."
Yeah.
So she was
Well,
like, "If you stayed here with me, that might be a job for you. But if
there
you planning on going out and taking care of yourself, you probably need to think of something else."
Yeah, and I know we got a lot to talk about, but I'll
Yeah.
tell you, there is a formative moment in my childhood, right? Like high school, figuring out what you're going to do. Are you going to go to college? What are you going to do? And my dad took me to, he had some friends. There's an executive chef of the Detroit Red Wings, and he took me there and he showed me everything. And he's like, hey, this is a path and it's a good one, right? But nights, weekends, family stuff, it's tough, right? And that's kind of why he decided to back out of it. And I remember him distinctly going, "You can love cooking and just cook for yourself, right? So you can
Yep.
do this if this
Yep.
is your calling and this is what
Yep.
you want to do."
Yep.
Or he's like, sales and marketing seems interesting.
Go
You
make
may
some
want to
money.
explore that. And by the way, go to college. So whatever you decide to do, you've got some backing. And it was
And
that like
same thing.
there are those moments, right, in your life that you're like,
Yep.
that was the moment where I was like, all right, I hear you. And I'm not going to be a typical teenage boy and rebel in this moment. I'm
Correct.
gonna probably take this. And it was again, I love cooking for myself. I love, figuring out new recipes. I think I was probably the only 20-year-old subscribing to Cooks Illustrated, to get new recipes. Not that I'm the 20-year-old anymore, but yeah.
No, it
So
is such a great story because I think we share again that passion, which my kids are out of the house now, but I definitely was that dad who was, teaching them at an early age how to properly reverse sear steak, how to actually, right,
right.
how to open oysters. Like I
Mm.
forced them. One of my things I thank my dad for doing with us as kids is he forced us to eat certain foods that traditionally
Yeah.
kids would want to eat so that we at least could never say we had never tried it. And so I carried that tradition forward and
Yeah.
double down on it, right? Like my kids were making sushi at home at
Yeah.
9 and 11 and 13, and they are now sushi snobs. Now, I know if my kids are watching this, they're probably like, Dad, don't tell everybody that. But my kids are, they're culinary snobs because I expose them to so many different types of good food
Yeah.
early in their life that now they just have a high level of expectation that everything's going to be, really good and that every guy can cook.
Listen, let's cancel the podcast now. We're not going to talk about marketing. We're just going to share stories because I think we can be best friends. Last thing and we can move on, but every Christmas, I think we were the only house. And my parents would go down to Eastern Market, which was in Detroit, and it was like our stockings would have cans of pate in there and Toblerone
Fine
chocolate. And
charcuterie.
yeah, just like you're like, who grows up this way? This is not, we didn't know it was normal. And then I met my, now wife, and she's like, what do you mean? You did what? But yeah, no,
Look,
we're the same way. My kids eat They eat everything. I try to tell them how spoiled they are, and
Oh, look, this is, you know what, this, you're right. It's a great segue into the core interview because I want to start with kind of how you got to where you are now, which you've already given us a little bit of that. So
yeah,
let's get ready to segue. Are you ready to jump into the main interview?
yeah, let's do it. Yep.
All right, great. Look, so let's start right there. You have a fascinating story. I want to know a little bit more about that transition because as you spoke on kind of your path, you had
Yep.
a bit of a pivotal moment, right? And a lot of us do, where we're like, hey, do I go left or do I go right? And left is usually the non-traditional, right's usually the traditional.
Yeah.
So you chose right. Tell us and walk us through kind of what those next couple of steps in your life look like.
Yeah, so how far right I went. I'll tell you what, I went really far right. So I graduated college, did an internship with Walt Disney World. That was awesome. Got some like real boots on the ground experience and retail, management, working in the Magic Kingdom. My office actually there was a back door into Mickey Mouse's house, if you remember Toontown. And I just, again, at 20, I'm like opening this goofy size doorknob, walking into,
No way.
work while kids are, going through the front of the experience. And so that was wild. So did that, came back, and then I got a job at a company called Velasys, basically selling
Yeah.
print coupons, right?
Yep.
In early 2000.
We're dating ourselves. If those of you
Yeah,
watching the show
yeah.
remember with Velasquez coupons, you young folks don't remember, but there used to be a thing called Sunday newspaper that you would
Right.
get. Actually, there was a daily newspaper, which is really crazy. But in
Yeah.
the paper, in the middle of it, there would be these slicks of ads and coupons that you
Yep.
could take out and use.
Yep. Which I'll tell you, even at the time, we mentioned earlier you grew up in the 90s, so I'm a product of the 90s as well,
Mhm.
product of the 80s too.
Yep.
It wasn't like the thing I was passionate about. I remember going in, I interviewed, and the lady that ultimately gave me the job, she was fascinated with that Disney internship, right? And she had a Disney Vacation Club membership, and I think the entire time we just spent talking about, oh my God, how was it? What'd you do? All that kind of stuff, right? And I got there and I learned there, one, that company was filled with some of the best culture and leaders that I still sort of long to find, even after having created a, culture and
Yeah.
been in leadership, right? Where you're
Yeah.
like, even though it was, coupons and print, and, at the time I'm like, oh, digital, and, Facebook was a thing. And
Mhm.
I had a desire to do something more, different, which was a great decision to leave. It was a great foundational place to go learn about CPG, marketers, brand initiatives, driving trial, how they use these tools.
I
And
love
I'm
it. And it was
thankful for my
Velasquez
time
at the
there.
time. Were they a public traded company or private?
That is a fantastic question. I think they were
Private,
public.
right? I think.
Yeah, they might have been. They might have been. I'm not
And it
sure.
went public. And the reason
Listen,
I
I
ask is
I didn't
because you
have
got
one
a
of the
lot of those.
jobs that options was available to me. I was the low man on the totem pole, so it could have been.
No, and the reason I mention it is because, like you, we both grew up in the late 80s, early 90s in an industry that had way more stability, right? And
Yeah,
it typically kind of played out that a lot of the private companies or privately owned companies or just smaller publicly owned companies
yeah,
were able to have, 25, 30-year veterans in the building when we showed up as, young 20-year-olds
yeah,
trying to learn something. And so I agree with you at SC Johnson. Same experience. I came in and there's just all this experience. My boss had been with the company at that time for almost 25, 30 years.
yeah,
My immediate manager or my second level manager had been around for 15 or 20 years. They knew the ropes, right? They weren't going anywhere. They weren't looking for the fast promotion and to get to the next market. I was. And so I was able to really learn. So it sounds like a similar experience there. So
yeah,
you're learning, you're gaining this experience, but you obviously are looking forward, to a lot of the newer
yep.
technologies and the newer plays on the market. So how did that happen?
Yeah, no. So I had a boss that left to join a startup, and it was a biometric payment authentication company. So if you think
Wow,
about, literally, this would have been
ahead of
2005
their
ish,
time. Yeah.
six. Going to the grocery store and paying for your groceries with a fingerprint.
Mhm.
Totally wild, right? And quite frankly, ahead of
Way
its
ahead of its
time.
time. Way.
Ahead of its time. So, but that was a era when there was a lot of capital flowing around and people were
Mhm.
investing in this thing. They raised a ton of money, and I just, again, joined as a pretty mid-level guy.
Mhm.
While there, they were realizing that the whole biometric payment authentication thing wasn't picking up steam. Surprisingly, or not surprisingly, people were a little, quite frankly, creeped out by it back then. We weren't unlocking our phones with our fingerprints, let alone faces at that point. And so they ended up buying a company called S&H Green Stamp. So if you either know it, S&H Green Stamps, it's a brand that people of a certain age like grew up with, and it was really the first retail-based loyalty program. You would get physical stamps and then put it into a book and take that book into your retailer, and they'd give you a kitchen table or something.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then they transitioned their business into managing databases and loyalty programs for a lot of regional retailers. So I hopped over. It was cool, new, different startup. And the whole idea was to use the infrastructure of loyalty to create front of store offers that would encourage people to scan their fingerprint and then get these offers and go redeem them. And oh, by the way, now you can start paying for your stuff, which is where all the money was. Financial crisis hit, 2006, 7, 8, for those of us who owned homes.
Yep.
Not the best of times.
Nightmare.
And yeah, it was not a great time. So that folded. And again, you talk about the importance of networks and working with good people. That my boss at the last company just happened to go work for an agency, which was the Mars agency, who's a huge player in the
I worked with the Mars agency before.
Yeah. And he was in a room with the founder and CEO at the time, Ken Barnett, who happened to be talking about Prize Logic and essentially I don't want to say silent partner, but a majority partner in starting up a new promotions agency. And so it was him and two other guys, Tim and Keith, who were awesome, that were essentially the catalyst to start this, promotions shop. And just my boss happened to be in a meeting. They were talking. He goes, "Hey, I got a kid." He probably said at the time, he's like, "I got a guy. He's good with clients and he's smart. He lied about a whole lot of other things." I'm just kidding. And threw my name in the ring, and I met for coffee with who would become my boss and mentor for 15 years after that. And he walked me through the pitch and what they were trying to build, and I went on as the first employee of Prize Logic, and I stayed there for 15 years, from about what would that have been, 2008, until we sold to private equity in 2016 and then to a strategic buyer in 2021. I stuck around for a year, and then and the last.
So you stayed through the initial sale to private equity, stayed on, and then you rolled up to the second exit, and then the second exit you stayed on for another year after that.
Yeah, that was a strategic buyer, so they had a great leadership team. They took a lot of the assets and equity from Prize Logic, rolled it into their stack, and they're still doing some pretty awesome stuff. So, but over that time, man, it was awesome. I think I've built every possible permutation of anything: sweepstakes, game, contest, loyalty program. Had the just utter joy of actually working with brands I loved, like Disney. It felt like I was able to go home, and I was working with those people that, taught me some stuff during my times at the internship. We worked with T-Mobile and helped them launch T-Mobile Tuesdays, and just a ton of great.
And talk a little bit about like what the typical project looked like for you in that capacity when you worked for them.
Yeah, I can. And it's similar to now, fast forward, I'm at Snipp as our chief revenue officer, and it's similar. We get a lot of sort of tentpole or project-based business brands that are looking to, stand up a sweepstakes or a gift with purchase program, maybe a rebate, buy X, get Y type programs, or brands that are looking to build evergreen and long-term loyalty programs, sometimes points-based, sort of earn and burn, other times, access based, where you being a part of this loyalty program gives you benefits to things that you wouldn't be able to get. So sometimes this is a wild industry. You get a call and they're like, "Hey, we forgot we are doing something for the Super Bowl. Can you go build a promotion in the next 2 weeks?"
Right.
And other times you're working on projects and sort of figuring them out and going through a lot of the qualitative and quantitative work to make sure that what you're building is going to resonate in the marketplace. Um, but what's consistent is the inconsistency, because there's
Yeah.
always, when we started Prize Logic, it was like, hey, how do you get people to opt into your email database? And then there's this Facebook thing going, and it's super free. And if I can build my organic audience, I can reach them and never need to buy
Mhm.
media again. And then it's, how do you play the algorithms? And now we're sort of back to the importance of first party data and retail media networks. And how are you building these things to support key retail accounts? So,
And that
um,
that is probably where I wanted to go next is both companies, your current company now,
yep.
previously your work really relied on really strong data streams,
Yeah.
right? And it's something that I think both you and I witnessed as we kind of entered or exited the 90s into the 2000s. Retailers started to realize, led likely, primarily by Walmart,
Hmm.
started to realize that the data that they had on consumers was more valuable than just mining for simple inventory and traffic reasons, right? It really played a huge role in loyalty,
Yeah.
and promotional programs. So can you talk a little bit about like the underlying principles that drive kind of how you decide or put together these promotional programs and these loyalty programs, and how it really ties to the data?
Yeah. Yeah. I can try. I'll do my
Yeah.
best. So, and I guess, I mentioned a couple programs that we were a part of early on.
Mhm.
Again, during my time at some of these other companies, right? T-Mobile Tuesdays has been a big one, where when they thought about loyalty, it wasn't the sort of earn and burn method that I think you see a lot in the CPG space.
Yeah.
They wanted to think about it in the sense of there's sort of three times you interact with your telecom provider. It's they drop your call, and so you're
Mhm.
angry at them.
Mhm.
It's the time of the month where you got to pay your bill, and so you're angry at them. Or
Mhm.
it's the end of your 2-year cycle, and
Yep.
you got to decide if you want to negotiate
Mhm.
and stay
Yep.
there
Oh,
and get
yeah.
something free, or go hop over to the other guy. And
Yeah.
what I always thought was brilliant about the T-Mobile Tuesdays, loyalty program is they sort of flipped it all on its head and said, "Hey, every Tuesday, we're going to give you a reason to engage with T-Mobile and get something, a reward, a thank you, thanks for being part of our,
Right.
brand.
Mhm.
Log in to the app, claim whatever it was, that they were giving you, and go." And I think there was a huge, obviously, I wasn't directly responsible for coming up with that insight, but I think as the brand went through that work to figure out that like they can rethink loyalty in
Mhm.
a way that maybe was more obvious in your industry, um, it
And less
unlocked a lot of like
transactional,
revenue
it
stream.
feels
Yeah,
like.
yeah, right, perfect. Yeah, not transactional. On the other side, and I'll actually fast forward to today, I'm sort of out always, um I'm talking a lot with, stakeholders and brand managers and, pretty important people at these clients we have. And it's like, listen, here's the reality. We're living in I would call it a cost of living crisis, right?
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
inflation everybody's, aware of, and,
Yep.
it stopped going up. Hopefully it's not going to start going up again, but the
Yep.
damage has been done in how significant the cost increases have been.
Yep.
And the brands that are really leaning into and using their loyalty programs to understand that what consumers need right now is value and
Mhm.
cost relief, I think are the ones that are winning.
Mhm.
And I'll use another program, 19 Crimes, they're Infamous Insiders. So it's
Yep.
obviously totally different than T-Mobile Tuesdays. They have it's a points-based loyalty program, and it's brilliant. So you can upload receipts, which, shows that you made a purchase and you get points. And they've got non-purchase based, engagement based
Yep.
activities on there, answering polls and sharing with a friend and signing up for things that can earn you points. And so not maybe atypical from a lot of points-based programs, but what was so smart about that program is, or I should say, recently when I look back at it again, is they've taken their sort of reward philosophy, which used to have a lot of tchotchkes and physical
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
And now it's just like, hey, get these points, and those translate into discounts, dollars and cents. And if you're loyal and we have a loyalty program and you're buying our products, well, good news. You can now afford to buy more of the products that you obviously love because you're part of
It's
this
kinda
loyalty
like the
program.
transition between the old school American Express rewards program, right? Which was definitely about items and getting holy grail experiences and tickets, etcetera. Then it
Yeah.
transitioned into this, like, grocery store fuel point, right, earn and
Yeah.
burn, where you literally were, just by virtue of the points, consuming more,
Yeah.
right, of said product. Where do you, because one of the things that I want to always focus founders on and new founders is understanding kind of both the long-term benefits
Hmm.
and the short-term benefits. And there's always been a debate between loyalty programs and promotions, right?
Yeah.
And loyalty is a long-term investment in your consumer. Promotions are short-term way to drive sales and profit.
Yeah.
What's your advice to founders on how they should think about weighing the decision between which one, or how to approach that mix between promotions and loyalty?
Yeah. Great question. And let me back up and say, I don't necessarily think when we say loyalty, we also have to mean a loyalty program, right? There is this
Great point.
definition of loyalty, which is
Yeah.
the sort of full construct of the pre-buying experience that your customers might have with your brand, the
Mhm.
tactical touch and feel, the product
Mhm.
decisions you're making.
Mhm.
It's the actual like experience of the product once they buy
Mhm.
it, and is it
Mhm.
actually delicious and wonderful and
Mhm.
flavorful, and
Mhm.
they feel good about eating it. And then it's even things like, hey, I didn't, maybe that wasn't a great experience, and do you have a money back guarantee? Or when I chat to, complain to customer support, do they take care of me and,
Yep.
apologize and say, hey, here's, try this, you might like it better. And I feel like those, broadly speaking, we talk about loyalty, like those are all things that matter. And if I were a founder and or starting a brand, you got to be thinking about all those things. Now, in the
Mhm.
context of marketing and a loyalty program, it's hard if you're new, I think, to start with loyalty if you're still in that trial based building an
Building
audience phase.
awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, and even if you're there, um, one of the pitfalls I see a lot of even big brands when they're launching new loyalty programs is, most obviously have some type of economics involved. And for simplicity, let's just keep it in like the earn and burn or points
Yep.
based
Yep.
world, right?
Yep.
Until I'm part of Delta Sky Miles or the Marriott Bonvoy program, and I'm seeing this marketing that's like, hey, 100 points or $1 a point or 10 miles for every dollar spent on my Amex card. I don't really know what that means. I don't know
Right.
what the
Has no
economics of it
value to
are.
you.
It
Yeah.
has no value to me. And so I think that's where you can say, hey, it's great. Build a loyalty program, start to create a relationship with your consumer, use that as a long-term ongoing strategy to, I was talking about like breadcrumb
Yep.
approach, like how you learn more about those people. Cause most, I don't know about you, but when I was prior to being married and dating my wife, it wasn't like the first date, let's say everything and I'm going to try and get all the information I can from you. Like over time,
Exactly.
we
Over
built a
time.
relationship.
Yep.
So I think sweepstakes and promotions and these short-term tentpole promotions, one, they can have a sort of very sort of specific purpose that brands can use to drive sales in a short time period. But what they can also do is act as your acquisition driver for your longer term play to say, hey, I don't know what 100 points is, but I do know what it means to win, be entered for a chance to win a trip to the Super
Mhm.
Bowl. And if that's the thing that gets me into starting the relationship, to understanding the loyalty program, to getting those points, well, then I think you have both of these tactical things working together to create a better
I love
experience
that.
for your customers. Yeah. So I don't know if I think it's, look, brands got a lot of options in their toolkit. So I don't think
Mhm.
it
To
has to be
use.
either or. I think it's how you think about using both.
That's a great point, and just extending that one step further, how would you advise brands, because now you've got this digital transformation that's totally changing kind of how loyalty programs can be executed. But to your point, small brands, limited resources, don't have a lot of dollars to throw at every single tactic in the marketing and promotional toolbook.
Yeah.
So how would you advise brands to think about, smaller brands on a limited budget, to think about spends at the loyalty program? Should they create loyalty programs for their own brand? Should they be engaging with loyalty programs within the retail environment that they may have distribution in? Like, what is
Yeah.
your advice on, if you're a small brand with limited dollars, should you even be spending on loyalty at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I would do is if you're a small brand, you have limited distribution and, Walmart's giving you a chance to go prove that you can sell, is I would go get in bed with Walmart as much as possible to
Yep.
participate in the programs
Agreed.
that they're going to support you in and
Yep.
give you end cap displays or merchandising support,
Yep.
right? We were saying earlier, like stack it high and let it fly. If the retailer gives you that chance, you take it.
Yep. Exactly.
Obviously, as you start to evolve, or if you need to get beyond just that single retailer relationship, that's where you can start to establish maybe what's your strategy for some of these other marketing tactics. Again, within the context of a loyalty program, what I always tell people is like, make your list, build what does the perfect loyalty program look like for you, for your consumers, for your brand. Just start writing everything
Mhm.
you want it to be, and then basically rip half of it off and just focus on 50%. Prioritize it and go like, hey, this is the most important 50%, whatever, 40%, 30%, it doesn't matter.
Can we hear that again?
Make your list, build what does the perfect loyalty program look like for you, for your consumers, for your brand. Just start writing everything
Mhm.
you want it to be, and then basically rip half of it off and just focus on 50%. Prioritize it and go like, hey, this is the most important 50%, whatever, 40%, 30%, it doesn't matter. Because oftentimes, as a small brand, you probably don't have the budget to do everything you want.
Correct.
And two, even if you have the budget, you may not have the resources or skill to execute it well. And I think a lot of brands get in trouble when they have these big picture ideas and they look good in a PowerPoint, but now it's time to bring it to life in the real
Exactly.
world application. And like, I don't know how to communicate it. What's my messaging hierarchy? How do I focus on what pieces of it to tell consumers about first? It's like just pull back, keep it
Got
simple, like reward them. And I know I'm rattling here for a second, but there's easy tools. There's a um it's called the BJ Fogg model from a professor in, I think, Stanford.
Mhm.
I hope his name is BJ Fogg.
Yeah.
And I hope, if it not, it's gonna be really weird. He's like, that was my neighbor's name. And it's just like, it's like, hey, you have to sort of map what are the motivations a consumer has to engage? What are the abilities for them to do it? Is it an easy task or a hard task? And then where's the intersection of that? And if you look at something and you go, man, there's like low motivation to register for my loyalty program because I'm making spaghetti sauce and I'm not giving them anything for it. And it's really hard to do because I'm asking you to, register, tell me your name, address, date of birth, zip code, blood type, social
Yeah.
security number, scan a picture of the receipt, tell your mom about it. Naturally, right? That's some sort of example. They're
Yep.
not going to do it. So I always sort of think about these programs when we're talking to clients and go, listen, just map it. It's motivations, abilities, and prompts. You've kind of got this curve where if you're thinking about it the right way and you've got high motivations, and this goes back to your question around data and insights, do you really
Mhm.
understand what's important to your consumer, right? The crunch pack promotion we were chatting about, it's targeted towards parents like me who want to give my kids a healthy product,
Mhm.
but the reward was an exclusive in-game um object
Yeah.
for Minecraft, which is my
Yeah.
kids, right? And you say Minecraft and they
They get a free skin, they're happy.
yeah.
They
Yeah, and
got a
so it's
healthy
like, hey,
meal,
they're
you're
okay.
happy. Yep.
Yeah, so those are the things, and it's super easy. Prove my purchase, get my skin, go have fun. So
I love that because, I mean, one of the things that you reaffirmed is, again, the first, it starts with understanding your consumer,
yeah,
right? And I think a lot of brands will either make assumptions about their consumers that are not totally accurate,
yeah,
and therefore the program doesn't quite ever get traction because it only really represented value to a very small portion
yeah,
of the consumer base that you thought it mattered more. So I continually encourage, and I think founders listening to you are hearing it again, which is learn and understand your consumer. and
Yeah.
not just that one example of a consumer that you likely have either already working for you or you're already engaged with. Because I get a lot of founders that'll say, "Well, I asked my daughter, or I talked to the friend
Yeah.
that I started this idea with, and they think it's brilliant," right? And
Right.
it can't be one conversation. Go
Yeah.
out and talk to your true consumer in mass and understand what they value, where they shop. To
Yeah.
your point, their demographic. Do they have kids or not? Are they
Yeah.
middle income, lower income, et cetera? Because the program you design has to fit their needs. Now,
That's right.
you've been in the industry for over 20 years. You are now seeing how AI and just technology in general are starting to really shift a lot of the traditional tactical methods and practices we both used in the consumer products industry for years.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about some of those emerging trends that you're starting to see and how you think they could potentially affect the loyalty and
Sure.
promotion game moving into the future?
Yeah, and look, I'd be lying if I told you I knew it all and understood AI better than most. There's probably more qualified people to answer it, but I can say within the context of like our world and, at Snipp, we've got a whole product around offers and a financial media network that allows us to distribute offers to brands on our bank
Mhm.
publisher networks, right? You can definitely see how AI can enable a better sort of selection around what offer to present to
The
the
consumer.
consumer and in
Mhm.
what order based on information that it
Yep.
knows from previous behaviors. And that's some of the stuff we're working on is like, hey, going back to the beginning of this conversation, it was a newspaper that came and in the Sunday version had a book of coupons
Mhm.
that somebody paid a premium for to be on the front page, and the company had to decide, is their extra money worth maybe the consumer seeing something that doesn't spark their interest in opening up the rest of the pages. And honestly, it doesn't change that much more now. It's how do you use AI to create a better experience so that when consumers see your offers, right? If you're a big brand like SC Johnson or
Yep.
Pepsi and you're thinking about doing it at scale, I want to show you the offer and the value that is most likely going to trigger an action from you. And look, AI's promise for changing all of our futures is seemingly endless. So it's in this one little niche. I'm like, hey, personalization of offer type is feels like a really useful tool for marketers. How and where and in what way that applies, I don't know.
No, it's
Uh,
great advice because I mean it is just it's a recognition of a trend that we're already seeing across multiple areas that AI has been able to essentially,
yeah,
ignite or almost, just boost, and stellar speed is the ability to get a very personalized right
right.
product or service as a function of engaging in some form of call it almost pre-surveying via AI, right?
Yeah.
Now, outside of AI, can you talk to the audience because I do want to make sure that our audience understands how your current company operates in this space and what products and services they may offer that could actually be of assistance to some of the founders and some of the brand owners listening to the podcast today.
Yeah. I can happily give a plug,
Yeah.
totally unbiased voiceover of why Snip is incredible. So
Yeah.
yeah, so Snipp, I've been here, I'm chief revenue officer. I've been here for a little under 2 years. I actually had met the founder and CEO back when I worked at my prior agency, because they had started with a real specialized piece of technology around receipt scan. They call it Snip Check. We call
Yeah.
it Snip Check. So whenever we were running promotions that were driving purchase validation, buy this product, scan your receipt, we would use their technology and then pull off all that information, validate that the purchase was made, and then after that it was just what are the rule sets. You want to give them sweepstakes entry,
What do
you
they
want to
get?
give them an
Yeah.
instant win game chance, you want to
Yeah.
give them a $5 gift card. So that was how I got familiar with Snipp. And then when my time came to an end, I just re-engaged and said, hey, I'm interested in staying in this space. Let's do something. So really what we talk about is we help enable brands to deliver more value to their consumers using a cross section of our platforms and services, right? So our goal or our job is to help brands figure out how to attract, engage, and sell. And we're pretty ashamed at the sell. You're a brand and your job is to
Yeah. Move
move
product.
product, and we're here to
Yeah.
help you do that. And so Snip Check is one of those ways, which is all around not only validating that thing is
Or
there,
made. Yeah.
but then we can pull we can pull a lot of other information off those receipts. And I'll give you an example of where I think a brand is doing it so smartly.
Yeah.
Fresh Steps is a cat litter brand, and they have a
Yeah.
loyalty program. And what's cool about their program is it's, hey, you get 5 points for every, Fresh Step product you purchase, which is, nothing mind blowing about that. So they, upload a receipt, you get your points, you can then use those points to redeem for, all sorts of discounts, coupons, products. You can donate to, shelters in your area. But what's also smart is we look for any other category-based purchase. And what they basically said is, we'll give you 1 point, right, for making a purchase in the category, even if it's not from one of our brands, because, hey, we love pet owners. And 2, we want you to feel rewarded for taking care of your pets. And then, behind the scenes, I'm learning a lot more about these people's purchasing behavior. I can see if you're buying a competitive product. I can see if you're buying something complimentary. I can now take all that information and figure out how to remarket to you differently. When just thinking about data overall, some of the smartest brands take that information from their loyalty program, take the top 10% of your customers, right, based on real purchase or engagement based data, go load that into a True Signal or, somebody that can pull out or anonymize it, pull out more insights based on just what those consumers declare to you. And then go create a segment, load it into LiveRamp, like target other people like them and, bring more into your program. And it's like this self-fulfilling circular campaign.
Wow. That was a really important point. Can we hear that again?
Some of the smartest brands take that information from their loyalty program, take the top 10% of your customers, right, based on real purchase or engagement based data, go load that into a True Signal or, somebody that can pull out or anonymize it, pull out more insights based on just what those consumers declare to you. And then go create a segment, load it into LiveRamp, like target other people like them and, bring more into your program. And it's like this self-fulfilling circular campaign.
And so that's Snipp Check. That's one service.
Sorry, I got distracted. Yeah, so you got Snipp Check, which is the receipt scan technology and all the insights and analysis that go along with it. We have a loyalty.
And real quick, is that a if I sign up for that as a brand, is that a to the consumer? Is that a front facing app or a website that I'm sending the consumer to for the scan? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's all white label. So we don't have what I would call a consumer facing brand. Everything we do is B2B.
So white label.
So if you're the brand, even when it comes to data ownership, right? Like we don't want to own the data. Our opinion is that's your customer, that's your data, you own it. We manage and process it and then hand it over to you.
Okay.
Which is different than other players
in a lot of companies. I think our listeners should understand that. I think everybody does quite see the sensitivity around data ownership in today's conversation. Just know that the world Chris and I come from, there was no question that the company that offered you the service was keeping the data. Now they might share data back with you, but you should assume they were going to keep the data. So I think that's a really, really cool feature for you. And to work with your company. Now talk about like what that looks like in terms of like size of brand, size of company. Do I have to really be a big brand with the hundreds of thousands of dollars in budget to do something like Snipp Check?
Yeah, so so we are primarily geared towards enterprise clients, big brands that are looking to execute at scale, but it's not out of the question for your sort of medium-sized brands who just want to leverage our API and enable that. So in the Snipp Check side of it, there's that. We've got loyalty solutions where, again, we have bespoke abilities to create totally custom loyalty programs, but we also have a loyalty light product or version of it where if you're a small or up and coming brand and you just need some basic capabilities to collect data, provide a sort of
definitely a lot of the brands we work with.
Yeah, exactly. We can help there. And then the latest thing we're doing is we have a product called Snipp Offers, which we've recently launched. And in partnership with our financial media network, we can actually create, scannable barcodes, so digital barcodes, where you can host that barcode on your site or distribute it to your consumers. And then within the network of close to 70,000 stores, primarily from Walmart, Kroger, Albertsons, some C stores, you can send consumers in store to buy your product, scan that barcode, which is attached to a SKU that you have essentially a discount on, and get the $1 off, $2 off, whatever you want off at the point of sale, which is pretty big, and that's a pretty affordable solution for small brands.
Talk to me a little bit more about that solution in terms of the sending the consumer into the store. So you have to have distribution, I'm assuming, in the store first, right, in order to even take advantage of that program.
Yeah. So our
yeah.
financial media network reaches. There's roughly 65 million consumers that we can reach through the bank app. So take Bank of America as an example. Bank AmeriDeals is their app for their consumers, where obviously for a long time they've been doing like merchant offers. Go to Ulta or Staples or Walmart and buy
X amount,
get 5% back, 10% off, whatever it was. Well, we ended up partnering with them to figure out, hey, we can bring the CPG lens to this thing. You guys can promote a new grocery deals tile and give your consumers one more reason why to keep the Bank of America card top of wallet, right? Like, I'm going to use my Bank of America card instead of my Amex or my Chase because I know I can load up these CPG funded offers and get, money back on a specific SKU.
I love that top of wallet, just real quick, like that's a phrase, here top of mind on on the data side and the insight side. I'm assuming that's the credit card industry lingo, right? Like top.
Exactly.
I want my product to be top of wallet. All right,
exactly. I want that to be the first card. We all do it, right? That's the card I'm using every day is the one that I pull out first, and that's top of wallet. So
I love that. That's actually, that's a new concept for me, but that's something that, to your point, as a consumer with cards in his wallet, makes so much sense.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's almost embarrassing how you're like, oh, why haven't I been saying that forever?
Yeah.
Because I hadn't heard it before coming here and getting engaged.
But now I'm gonna remember that one, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a conversation that you can have when you got money in your wallet and on your card, though, right? Like there were times in my life where top of wallet was really bottom of wallet, right?
Right,
like, it
exactly.
didn't matter what the top or the bottom was, the order was. There was nothing on any of them.
No, that's so true. So anyway, so for Bank of America and these other banks that are part of the financial media network, it's an excuse really to tell their consumers like, hey, there's more value here than there is over there. So use my card. For us, we can bring a new consumer base to your brand, right? They're not necessarily deal seeking consumers who are using some of those other third party savings apps who, might only be in a deal seeking mind. They're just people sort of going about their business and in their banking app and loading up some offers along the way. And then, basically there's the digital barcode that's accepted at the retailer network. Yeah. And then for those, if you don't have distribution in the stores that accept the digital barcode, we can enable receipt scan. So there's still opportunities for the consumer to get the credit. Yeah, exactly. Go buy one of these 50 participating SKUs and then we'll get you money back in your pocket, which again, right now, I think is the most important thing is just giving consumers money, putting it in their pocket, helping them afford those, what will soon probably be $10, $15 for, a dozen eggs.
Right now. It looks like it's headed that way. So no, that's great information. I'm going to make sure that we can include your information at the end of the show, so people can actually reach out to you and find out ways to work with you. But just really quick, while we're on the topic, can you share with our audience how they should then reach out if they are interested in potentially pursuing one of these two avenues to creating some loyalty programs for themselves?
Yeah. On the Snipp offer stuff specifically, we've got some real low cost opportunities if brands want to come in and sort of test it out, even if there's not national distribution. When you're talking to these retailers to say, hey, we've got a marketing plan that can put this in front of 65 million people, that's going to help them go, well, then I want to make sure I'm stocking your product and giving you display space, right?
Correct.
So for anything Snipp related, it's let's.talk@snipp.com, and that'll come into our team. And whether it's loyalty or sweepstakes or promotions or games or contests or offers, coupons, discounts, we'll get back to you in hopefully minutes.
I love that. I love that.
And doing their job.
Yeah, which I'm sure they are. And again, for our audience, we will provide that information and the links, not just in the episode notes, but you can also look for them after the episode is released on the brandblueprint.biz, not .com, because we're about that biz. But check it out on biz, and you will find Christopher's information and your ability to get in touch with him and to potentially pursue an opportunity to work with the company, which I would definitely advise you to do. I think one of the things that we have repetitively kind of reinforced in this particular episode, and we're going to continue to push our brands to be mindful of, is their consumer data. Understanding those insights, understanding how their consumer perceives the brand and how they are purchasing and engaging with the brand will then actually help any future loyalty program creation to be much more effective. And so before you call Chris, make sure you know your consumer, right? Like, don't call Chris, don't call me if you're not really sure on who your consumer is. And if you need to understand how to do that, you need to go a couple of episodes back. We've got that information for you. So Chris, as we get ready to wrap up here, can you just give our audience some parting advice on, especially with some of the trends you talked about, AI, like you and I both? I don't have the answers. You don't have the answers. I doubt if anybody over the next couple of years is going to have the majority of the answers. But if you could advise a small brand founder, owner who's watching the show right now on what would be maybe a good next step to try to or start the exploration around adding a loyalty program to their brand, what would your advice be?
I think I would go back to what we were talking about earlier and go decide what is this most important piece of a loyalty program. What are you really trying to do? And just lean in on a feature or a component. Make sure you can really communicate that seamlessly. Make sure there's real value in whatever that thing is you're communicating. Don't fool yourself. Don't talk to yourself. Attach it. I used to always say you got to trade value to get value, right?
Yep.
So if you're going to ask a consumer to do something, you better have something for them that's worth it.
Whoa, we need to hear that one more time.
Go decide what is this most important piece of a loyalty program. What are you really trying to do? And just lean in on a feature or a component. Make sure you can really communicate that seamlessly. Make sure there's real value in whatever that thing is you're communicating. Don't fool yourself. Don't talk to yourself. Attach it. I used to always say you got to trade value to get value, right?
Yep.
So if you're going to ask a consumer to do something, you better have something for them that's worth it. And I think if you just sort of approach it from that perspective, you'll be doing all right. And make a good product. Like make a good product. I think all the marketing in the world can't save a bad product. So.
A bad product or a bad service. That is such a great point. And I think not just to reinforce that, but to double down, one of the things that I think the loyalty program does magnify are brands with great products and great services, right? And so loyalty is not extremely hard to execute when you're actually delivering on a brand or a product premise that people are like, yo, I like this. It makes sense. It works for me. And I think you're right, Chris. We both have worked with brands, on brands, and partnered with brands that have unfortunately not had a strong grasp on what their consumer really needed from them as a brand. And because that experience was already flawed with the consumer, the loyalty program just never took off. Right. And so I do think the information that you've provided the audience today should at least help our brand founders and owners understand, one, that the consumer is at the center of all of this. So you need to understand how that consumer actually is purchasing and engaging with your product before you can ever get to the point of creating an effective promotion or loyalty promotion. But I think in general, both, like you said, it's not one or the other. It's not mutually exclusive. I think it can, ideally be a combination of both promotion and loyalty that helps grow your brand in the short term and the long term.
Yep.
So appreciate that insight. So lastly, as we get ready to wrap up, as always, can you give the audience your social feeds and connections and ways to reach out to you after the show?
I mean, there's a pretty much abandoned social Twitter account, which is /Cubba, and LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me.
LinkedIn is definitely where I found you and where we've already connected. I would strongly advise our audience to go out on LinkedIn and send an invite to Chris as well.
Yep.
Don't go to that abandoned Twitter / X site, right? Most of us have abandoned that anyway. It's far more interesting for me to watch the actual live and real Elon Musk on TV every morning to see
Oh
what
man,
new thing that
yeah,
he's cooked up,
yeah,
right? So now, if you're on X and Twitter, don't look for Chris or me over there.
yeah.
Find us on
We're-
LinkedIn,
LinkedIn's the
right?
place. And if you find me on Instagram, it's just pictures of my kids doing something. So you don't want to go there either. So
Which
LinkedIn,
means
LinkedIn.
you need to be a personal friend anyway, right? Like my Instagram has become somewhat bastardized in that way because I'm trying to make sure that people also know about my professional pursuits. But I agree
Yeah,
with you. If you're over on Instagram and you see something personal, you probably weren't meant to be in that room anyway.
that's right.
So look, Chris, I have enjoyed having you on the show today. And as you said, we could talk for hours, which I hopefully will have a chance to do
Yeah, let's do it
outside
again.
of this. I want to continue this conversation, bring you back in, and let you contribute some additional advice and some great insights to the audience.
Yeah, anytime. This was awesome. I had a great time.
No, I had a great time as well. And so again, for our audience, don't forget, we will be sharing Chris's information and his relevant links on our website as well as on the episode show notes. So make sure you go there if you need any additional information. And as always, thank you for following the Brand Blueprint. Please like, share, follow. If you don't do that, I tend to think you might be a hater. So don't be a hater. Go in and like our content, share and send it out. And most importantly, make sure you go out and look up Chris. I think, again, I cannot talk enough about specialists with this level of expertise that really are game changers for the right brands who have the right consumer base and are ready to engage something like a really strong loyalty program. Chris and his team could really take you to the next level. So don't hesitate to reach out to him in the short term, but in the long term, we'll see you again soon on the Brand Blueprint. Have a great one. Thanks for joining us on the Brand Blueprint journey. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms to stay updated. Watch the full episodes on our YouTube channel for an in-depth experience. Don't forget to subscribe to our website at thebrandblueprint.biz for exclusive content and materials. We're everywhere you need us to be.